Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into something pretty fascinating, maybe even a bit of a game changer in software development. It's called vibe coding.
That's right.
We've got this really interesting analysis here. It's titled Vibe Coding, a New Era of AI-Accelerated Software Development. It's by Victor Leung, and it just came out February 2025.
Very recent, yeah.
So our mission today really is to get a solid handle on what vibe coding actually is. You know, what are the main ideas behind it? How are people using it? What's good about it? And what are the catches, the limitations?
Makes sense.
We want this to be your quick way to grasp what seems like a pretty big shift in, well, how software gets made these days. It's all driven by this boom in AI, especially these large language models.
It really is quite something. The pace of change, isn't it? These LLMs, they're not just tinkering around the edges. It feels like they're enabling totally new ways of doing things.
Exactly. So this piece should help us clarify, what's unique about vibe coding in this fast-moving landscape. Okay, so let's kick things off. What is vibe coding exactly?
Well, basically, vibe coding is, let's say, a modern way to build software where you're mainly using natural language, just plain English prompts, to tell an AI what code to write.
Okay. Like talking to the computer to make it code.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like having a conversation where you describe what you need the software to do, and the AI tries to, well, translate that into actual working code.
Okay, conversational coding. That's interesting. The article mentions the term itself, vibe coding, was actually coined by Andrej Karpathy just this past February. That seems incredibly quick for an idea like this to catch on.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think that speed tells you something about how eager developers are for more efficient ways to build things. The main goal here is pretty clear. Cut down on how much code you have to type out manually.
By leaning heavily on these AI coding assistants, the article mentions ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, Cursor, those kinds of tools.
Exactly those. Instead of typing line after line of, say, Python or JavaScript, you're describing the function you want in English.
Right. Can you walk us through how that looks in like a practical sense? What's the workflow?
Yeah, sure. It's surprisingly straightforward in a way. You start by just describing what you want the software to do, plain language, like you're explaining it to a colleague, maybe a very literal-minded colleague. Then the AI takes your description and generates the code. And this is crucial, you don't just stop there. You have to test it. Does the code actually do what you asked?
And if it doesn't?
Then you troubleshoot. And often, that means going back to the AI. You might refine your prompt, give it more detail, maybe point out where it went wrong. It becomes this back and forth, this iterative cycle. Prompt, generate, test, refine. Prompt, generate, test, refine.
Until it works as expected. The article even has that quote from Karpathy, something like, I just see things, say things, run things, and copy-paste things, and it mostly works. That sounds almost casual.
It does have that vibe, yeah. That sort of apparent ease reflects this deliberate shift. Get something working fast, iterate quickly. But underlying that ease are some core principles, a kind of vibe coding mindset, if you will.
Okay, mindset. Let's dig into those principles. What are the key ideas making vibe coding, well, vibe?
Okay, first off, like we said, it's all about using natural language first, rather than banging out code yourself. And that implies, a pretty significant level of trust in the AI's ability to get it right, or at least close.
Trusting the machine, basically.
Yeah, to do the bulk of the development work. Second, there's a huge focus on rapid prototyping. Getting a version up and running quickly is prioritized over getting it perfect right away. Think minimum viable product on steroids almost.
So speed over perfection, at least initially. Get something functional out the door.
Exactly. It's the working version first idea. You only spend time polishing it up if, you really need to. Which leads to another point. Accepting a certain level of tolerable imperfection.
Tolerable imperfection?
Yeah, especially for projects where maybe 100% flawlessness isn't the absolute top priority.
Yeah. Like
a personal tool or an early prototype. And maybe the biggest thing, it really lowers the barrier to entry.
How so?
Well, someone might have a great idea for an app or a tool, but maybe they don't have traditional coding skills. Vibe coding potentially lets them build it anyway, just by describing it to an AI.
That's a really powerful idea. The democratization of creating software. You could see loads of little niche tools popping up.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does. Now, the article mentions some typical areas where vibe coding is really finding its feet. Where's it being used most effectively right now?
Well, according to Leung's piece, rapid prototyping is a big one. just quickly sketching out ideas, seeing if they work.
Makes sense. Quick iterations.
Yeah. Also, building those small personal productivity tools we talked about. Little scripts or utilities that might not normally justify a big development effort.
Right. Things just for yourself or a small team.
Exactly. And people are using it to learn, too. Learning new programming languages or frameworks. The AI can generate examples, explain things. It's like an interactive tutor.
How interesting. Like training wheels for a new language.
Kind of, yeah. And finally, it's being used to speed up the creation of MVPs, minimum viable products. Especially helpful for startups or small teams trying to get something to market fast to test the waters. Speed and agility. That's the name of the game there.
Okay, speed, simplicity, accessibility. Those seem like clear wins. But look, nothing's perfect. There got to be downsides, right?
Right.
What are the limitations we need to be aware of?
Oh, for sure. The article's pretty clear about the limitations. A major one is the code the AI generates. It might work, but it could be messy, inefficient, or hard to maintain down the line. Not exactly clean code sometimes.
Right, the kind of code that gives you headaches later.
Could be. And that ties into debugging. If you didn't really write the code and maybe you don't fully grasp how the AI put it together, finding and fixing bugs can become, well, a lot harder.
Yeah, I can see that. Trying to debug someone else's logic is tough enough, let alone an AI's logic.
Exactly. Which is why the article strongly advises against using vibe coding for, say, critical production systems. Things where you need super high reliability, security maintainability. The stakes are just too high.
So think twice before using it for your bank's core systems or, I don't know, air traffic control?
Please, yes. Definitely think twice. And there's also the risk of just relying too much on the AI without enough human oversight. You still need quality control, right? How do you guarantee that when the code generation is a bit of a black box?
So it sounds like it's a fantastic tool for getting started fast, for prototypes, maybe side projects, but probably not the right fit for building, the foundations of a major application.
That's a good way to put it. Which brings us neatly to a really important distinction the article makes. Vibe coding versus what you might call traditional AI-assisted programming.
Okay, yeah. What's the key difference there? Because AI tools like Copilot have been around for a bit, helping developers. How is vibe coding different?
That's a great question. It really comes down to the level of trust and control. With vibe coding, you're placing a lot more trust in the AI. The AI is generating most, maybe even all, of the code. The human review might be lighter, focused mainly on does it work quickly.
Okay, AI leads, human follows, roughly speaking.
Sort of, yeah. Whereas in traditional AI-assisted coding, the human developer is still firmly in the driver's seat. AI tools are helpers. They suggest things, complete lines, maybe help refactor, but the human writes the core logic, reviews everything thoroughly, and takes full responsibility for the code's quality.
So AI as a co-pilot versus AI as the pilot, almost.
That's a decent analogy, yeah. And the suitability reflects that. Vibe coding shines for those fast, maybe less critical projects. Traditional AI-assisted coding is still the go-to for production systems where robustness and maintainability are paramount.
Got it. That distinction is really helpful. Now, if someone wants to actually do vibe coding, what skills do they need? It sounds like it's more than just being good at writing prompts.
Oh, absolutely. Prompt engineering is part of it, but not the whole story. Logical planning becomes maybe even more important. You need a really clear picture of your project's structure, how the pieces fit together, before you start telling the AI what to build.
You need the blueprint before you hire the AI construction crew.
Exactly. And being familiar with frameworks that AI tends to handle well helps too. The article mentions things like Rails, Django, Next.js frameworks with strong conventions that AIs can often grasp more easily.
Okay, planning, knowing the right frameworks. What else?
Frequent checkpointing is crucial. Using Git constantly or cloud snapshots, because the AI might generate something weird or break something, and you need to be able to roll back easily to a known good state.
Ah, the undo button is your friend.
Very much so. Also, disciplined debugging is still essential. You might even find yourself needing to reset to a clean state more often just to avoid accumulating messy AI code technical debt.
Right. Start fresh if things get too tangled.
Sometimes, yeah. And finally, context management. You need to be good at feeding the AI all the necessary information, the project goals, maybe relevant documentation, details about your setup. The more context the AI has, the better its output will likely be.
It's like you're managing the AI's knowledge base for the project.
You kind of are, yeah.
Yeah.
You're the architect and the project manager, guiding this very capable but sometimes unpredictable AI coder.
Architect and project manager for AI. I like that framing. And speaking of tools, the article calls out a few specific ones that are popular for this. What did it
I highlighted a few. There's Cursor, which apparently integrates AI deeply into a more traditional local IDE setup. Seems geared towards maybe more serious or complex projects done this way.
Okay, for deeper work.
Then there's Windsurf. The name itself suggests speed, right? It's apparently optimized specifically for that rapid prototyping, quick prompting workflow.
Makes sense.
And it also mentions Replit. That's more of an online browser-based environment, known for being super quick to get started with and having strong collaboration features, good for demos or team projects.
So different tools for slightly different needs within this vibe coding approach?
Seems that way, yeah. They're all evolving to kind of bridge that gap between human intention and AI execution.
Now, the article also mentions some more advanced techniques attributed to Tom Blomfield from Y Combinator, taking vibe coding a step further, perhaps.
Yeah, some interesting points there. Blomfield apparently emphasizes planning the project structure before even touching the AI, maybe using Markdown or something similar.
We're planning again.
Right. He also suggests focusing more on integration tests, making sure the different AI-generated parts work together rather than getting bogged down in unit tests for every little piece, which kind of fits the rapid, holistic approach.
Test the whole system works, not just the tiny components.
Sort of, yeah. And using AI for more than just code, like getting help with hosting setup or even generating images or other assets, using AI across the stack.
Interesting. Spreading the AI assistance wider.
And he apparently suggests trying different LLMs. Maybe Claude is better for one task, Gemini for another. Don't just stick to one. Also, using things like voice input or feeding the AI screenshots to communicate faster.
Voice and vision, not just text. Okay.
Plus, the classic advice. Keep your code modular. Small, clean files are easier for both humans and AIs to understand and work with. And regular refactoring, tidying up the code is still important, even if an AI wrote the first draft.
So even with AI doing the coding, good software practices still matter. Modularity, refactoring.
Absolutely. These advanced techniques show it's not just about quick hacks. There's potential for a more sophisticated, integrated way of working with AI.
Okay, so we've covered the what, the why, the how, the tools, the skills. Let's just quickly map out that typical workflow again, start to finish on a piece of functionality.
Right, the loop. Basically, 1, clearly describe what you need to the AI, natural language. 2, let the AI generate the code. 3, test that code. Does it work? 4, if not, debug. Often collaboratively with the AI. Tweak the prompt, give feedback. 5, once it works, save your progress. Checkpoint it.
Right, save often.
Definitely. And 6, repeat the whole cycle for the next feature or function. It's very iterative, very back and forth.
Describe, generate, test, debug, save, repeat. Got it. Seems much more fluid, maybe experimental than traditional coding cycles.
It can be, yeah. Which brings us to the bigger picture, the impact and the future. What does vibe coding really mean for software development?
What does the article suggest?
It suggests vibe coding is definitely reshaping things.
Yeah.
Making development faster, yes, but also more accessible, more experimental. It lets people try out ideas quickly, cheaply.
Lowering that barrier we talked about.
Exactly. But the article stresses that human oversight is still critical. You can't just let the AI run wild if you care about quality, security, or long-term maintainability. Speed is great, but not at any cost.
So it's powerful for prototypes, personal projects, learning, maybe early MVPs.
That seems to be the sweet spot, according to the analysis. But for the big, complex, mission-critical stuff, traditional coding practices, maybe assisted by AI but still human-led, remain essential.
It's not an either, then. It's adding another tool to the toolkit.
Precisely. The article frames it as mastering both vibe coding and traditional methods could be the key to unlocking new levels of productivity and innovation. Use the right tool for the job.
So summing up, vibe coding is this conversational, AI-driven way to code. Fast, experimental, great for getting ideas off the ground quickly and making coding more accessible.
Right, but with limitations, especially around code quality, debugging, and suitability for critical systems, it's a really significant evolution in how humans and AI can collaborate to create software.
This deep dive into Leung's piece definitely shines a light on a fascinating moment. This partnership between, human ideas and AI execution is clearly opening doors.
It really is.
Yeah.
And maybe that leaves you, the listener, with something to think about. How could this vibe coding approach genuinely democratize software creation? What might that mean for innovation down the road?
Yeah, and how does the role of a traditional programmer change in this kind of world?
Exactly. Think about your own work, your interests. Where could this kind of rapid development be really useful? But also, Always weigh those trade-offs, the speed versus maybe the long-term robustness and maintainability. Something to chew on. Thanks for exploring this with us.